All right. So today, resilience, struggle, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I feel like I've been struggling, not to use that word too much, but like where to start with this and even like resilience.
A few weeks ago, we actually started talking a little bit of just like kind of you. I think the big thing that is not understood for me is like how much went on before the injury. Like, just like there's like sort of a pre-injury thing, that's actually like a pretty incredible story in my opinion that I like really wanted to hear, and like I remember kind of being on the edge of my seat on the like, the Super Bowl, sitting there with the C on your jersey and, getting up for the coin toss. But we didn't even get to any of that other stuff. So to me, I would propose that we start with just sort of like, man, like after you get there, you're the number one pick. It seems like it's every kid's dream. Like what happens then? But Shane, you tell me if you think that's a good way to start.
I mean, like, look, this is called Glue Guys, and we're all known for making things work, but we're all pretty darn good in our own way. I mean, you're a Pro Bowl quarterback. You're a Pro Bowl quarterback. I mean, how many people in the history of ever playing football, ever taking a snap, could say they're a Pro Bowl quarterback? And that's like, right? I mean, that's part of this. Like, again, going back to what we talked about Glue Guys before, being called a glue guy, being called a game manager, called all these things, which can be disparaging, doesn't mean you can't be a dude, like a real dude, and at the top of the game.
Glue guys with resumes. That was your edit.
Yes.
You've talked about this before, Shane. Like narratives can flip so fast on that same thing, right? Like when I was in my last few years in San Francisco, when like the game manager thing was definitely thrust upon me and was kind of this negative thing because the team was so good, right? The team was so good around me, and it was like this idea maybe that I was even like a limiting factor in it. And then I got traded to Kansas City, who was they had the number one pick in the draft. They'd won 2 games the year before, right? 2 games, and obviously an entire regime change. We go there. I won my first 9 games, and like doing the same things. Like I was playing very much the same style of football, but like the narrative is like, oh, he's a winner. That came out. He's a winner. Like, and then that it's so funny, but like I really felt like my style and like even statistically was no different, but it was funny just the narrative, I guess, obviously the lens you look at it through. I think for me, where this all started, when you're in the middle of this, right? Like when I'm in the middle early in my career and trying to figure it out and you're just going, you don't have time to look up. Right? Like, and glance around and have perspective. And you're just trying to get through things, right? Like, and I got to the end of my career and I have this crazy, crazy physical injury, right? I break my leg, this full Joe Theismann injury, and then this gnarly infection, and it sets me down this path. And I somehow miraculously come back and freaking play, which I'm still baffled by. Well, that season ends. And this has been a whirlwind. Like the season ends, COVID is hit the world, and like all this stuff's going on. And in the midst of that, I haven't had any time to reflect. And freaking TED Talks, reaches out to me and was like, "We'd love to have you speak this year." And I'm like, obviously everybody knows about TED, and it's this like, the red circle and like super cool innovation in tech. And, obviously I'd played in San Francisco, and so was very familiar with, that entire world, the venture world and startup world that is TED. And so it was weird. I'm like, you're asking me, an athlete? So very strange. And then like humbled by it, but like also was like, well, what the hell am I going to talk about? Like what's important, right? And as I like, it started this reflection process for me on my injury. But for me, like you said, Ravi, like it was so much more than the injury, like my journey. I was definitely pulled back to things early on in my career that I struggled with that actually helped me. Like if I hadn't gone through those things earlier in my career, I never would have accomplished like coming back from my injury, right? Like that never would have happened if I hadn't learned kind of the lessons earlier in my career. And then I really, the light bulb came on as I kind of reflected again. I was lucky enough to play 16 years and then, going on before that, like college and high school. And you have this, for me, this 25-year journey of football, I guess, as I'm looking at it. And every major moment of that career, and really of my life, had come from struggle, right? Like every time I had growth or I learned something or something seriously important happened to me, it all was like spawned from me struggling, right? Like adversity. And it was kind of this, again, and I think it was something easier when I was on that side of it, right? Like reflecting back that I gained that perspective and like really changing my attitude towards it, right? Like for so long, adversity sucks. None of us want to go through adversity, right? Like hard times, like that's crappy. And you feel unlucky when that happens, right? And for me, kind of this like light bulb aha moment that like, well, maybe you had this completely wrong mindset towards adversity and struggle, and that these were all blessings, like all of them on the other side of it.
When is the first time you had that realization? Like, what was your first piece of adversity you had in your life that you said, "Oh man, this is tough"?
Yeah, for me, honestly, this is going to sound ridiculous because of how I grew up in San Diego, right? And I joke with this all the time. Like it was a really rough upbringing, right? Like freaking San Diego, California. I'm the third of 4 kids. I grew up with a great middle-class family. Like I didn't have problems and struggle at all. I didn't know it. Like I was just cruising along, like again, like really, really lucky. And even on the football side of it, my high school running back was Reggie Bush. Like, come on. Like we won every single game and I didn't even have to do anything. And it was ridiculous. And I somehow got one scholarship offer to go play at Utah and happened to be timed with Urban Meyer coming and like the dawn of the spread option, and no one had ever seen it before, in this incredible timing that matched up with, this offense that really shined a light on the quarterback. And for 2 years, I lit it up in college. Very much a product of my surroundings, right? And all of a sudden, I'm at the Heisman, and I'm the number 1 pick in the draft. And that, Shane, like right there is where things changed for me. Like the first time I ever really knew adversity was I was a 20-year-old kid, and I had just become the number 1 pick in the NFL. Again, my picture's on every newspaper in the country. What, like, this is a blessing. Like, again, like, think about how crazy that is, what I just said. Like, that's every, like, childhood boy. Like, if you're a football fan, that's your dream come true. And that, for me, was the moment when, like, holy fuck. Like, how did I get here? How did this even happen? I'm in over my head.
But Alex, can I tell you something real quick on that? That's so crazy. Is, dude, like, literally, like, when you're a kid, I mean, you said you never dreamed of going to the NFL, right? Because like, it was too big of a dream almost. But, like, that feels like the end of the journey. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, like what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the NFL and be the number 1 pick. And you're saying it's like, no, it's not the end of the journey. That's the beginning of the struggle. Like that's fucked up. That's crazy. That's not at all like, like you don't even dare to dream more than that a lot of the time.
For sure. Also in that sense that like, and that this goes to like goals. Like certainly I had reached a goal, but also like this brand new problem was just starting, right? Not a problem, but like, like literally I'm the number 1 pick. Now I got to go deliver, like that entire concept and expectations. And I had never dealt with expectations in my life before that, like, especially to this kind. Again, 20, you're the number 1 pick, so like this idea of like, I got to be Peyton Manning. This is like a childhood hero of mine. I got to be him.
Who's saying this?
Me.
Are you reading this on blogs? Are you on Twitter? Like, yeah, like who is saying you have to be somebody that, you may or may not want to be?
I mean, it's 1,000% it's me. I've like instantly in my head, and then, again, this is all spawned by imposter syndrome. Like, again, like I said, I felt like I was in over my head. Like it was this constant fear of like, holy shit, how long till they find out like they made a mistake, that this was a bad decision. And yeah, with it though, I'd idolized these guys that were drafted number 1 overall that walked out there. Again, like Peyton Manning, all of a sudden we have the same agent. Like, are you kidding me? And then also on top of that, it's the San Francisco 49ers, right? Like it's Joe Montana and Steve Young. And very much this fan base knows what good quarterbacking is, right? And layered in this, Shane, was this level of like, what I had done in college wouldn't work in the NFL, right? Like that I needed to be a pro style quarterback. And so this definitely hovered over me. As I do think if I'd have come in today and been able to play in the shotgun every snap, and it was an offense that like I'd been playing in college, like that transition would have been it would have been more familiar for me and easier for me to see myself doing well in it. But I there was this huge stigma that I had to be able to play from under center every single snap I ever took in a workout for an NFL team. And like through like I had to prove that I could be under center and take a 7-step snap. a 7-step drop and play with a fullback and play with 2 tight ends and play a pro, quote unquote pro style system. And so that definitely like loomed over me that I had to do that. And it weighed on me.
Anyone ever tell you like, Alex, we just need you to be you. We don't need you to be Peyton Manning.
No,
we don't
no,
need Montana.
No.
Like literally nobody.
No.
And like, do you think, I'm just trying to like think about what would have been like good leadership to you in that moment? Like, is there anything someone could have said that would have like helped you in that moment? Or was it like, no, like you're the enemy of yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I didn't even know what that looked like. I didn't know what an NFL quarterback, like up close and personal, like how it looked on a Monday through Friday, like, like a week-long preparation and going out there in a game. And the 2 quarterbacks, when I made my first start for the 49ers, the 2 other QBs in the QB room had a combined 1 start, I think. 1 start. They were a second year and a third year QB who, like, there was no apprenticeship to learning how to play quarterback at the NFL level. And so like I spent hours and hours by myself in the film room. Like, I mean, I was putting in the time, but I had no idea what I was doing. Like absolutely none. And I was just there, lost, right? Like completely lost.
Ravi, I would say that's not atypical for pro sports. Okay. Like that's when you think of the mentorship role and the learning aspect, I think of my experience in college where Coach K would say, hey, look, you got to believe in yourself. And you got to do X, Y, and Z. And I believe in you. You can do it. In the pros, and tell me if I'm wrong, Alex, but like, it's like, okay, you have the talent. You're here for a reason. Now just do it. Now just do it. Figure it out. Figure it out. You have the talent, and I'm going to put you in the right place is to have success. But in terms of the psychological shaping and the self-talk, there is very, very little instruction on how to optimize as an athlete. And I think, athletes today are much more in tune with mental health and maybe psychological optimization through coaches and breathing and all the different techniques. But when we played back in the Stone Age, when we got drafted, there's none of that. Like you didn't talk about anxiety. You didn't talk about I'm unsure of myself. You just kind of sucked it up and you figured it out. And hopefully you had some coaches that could put you in the right place where that little bit of confidence you gained from performance unlocked your talent. Is that pretty accurate, Alex?
Totally agree. And I think there's the majority at the professional level is if you can't do it, then we'll just find somebody else that can. And there's not a great leash for development. Now, the great places do it. The great organizations do this. They have a development plan, right? Like to go to the apprenticeship thing, they bring people along. They know it takes time and reps. But I very much felt like, no, I have to do this right now. Like I got to prove that I'm the guy and lead us. And again, in the back of my mind, felt like I wasn't enough. So I had to stretch myself and do things that were out of character and be more than me. And you dig yourself a hole. My rookie year was a disaster. I threw 11 interceptions and 1 touchdown, Ravi. It was 11 interceptions and 1 touchdown. I threw the 1 touchdown.
How many were those your fault? How many were the receiver's fault?
They were all I probably should have thrown 20. They were all my fault, Shane. I was terrible. I had no business playing. I should not have been out there in hindsight.
How many games did you start?
God, I think I started half the season. I started week 4, but I got hurt in the middle of it and missed some games doing stupid stuff and then came back and played at the end. The 1 touchdown, by the way, was week 17, the last week of the season.
Oh, wow. And at this point, just so I know, are you like reading, like at this point, are you in a hole or are you like reading everything that's being written about you? What are you doing?
I'm in a hole for sure by the end of the season. I'm definitely dug myself a hole, a giant bust hole.
But are you reading the shit people calling you a bust or are you avoiding it?
You cannot avoid it. You cannot. And then I tried to, pretend like you try to, and I actually think that made it worse. I would have been much better to just like take it head on and embrace it. I was Rory not doing the media interview after he lips out, 2-3 foot putts. Yeah. Like stand up at the mic and like face the music, and I would have been better off. But
you're fucking 20.
Yeah, and I tried to present a confident, like I got this kind of thing, and that only made things worse. So then, and it just spiraled. Like I was also in a very like dysfunctional organization. Like at that point, this was the spawn of after my rookie year. my offensive coordinator left, Mike McCarthy. And this was a run of 7. I had 7 offensive coordinators in 7 years. Like, I mean, it's just a recipe for a disaster. And again, though, like I really do look at it was a lot of self-sabotage, though, more than anything for me. And then once you dug that hole, it just got worse and worse. It kind of became the point where like I couldn't even eat before games. Like you're just nauseous. The burden of Sundays like just loomed over me. It was hard, like really, really hard. And I wanted so badly to make people like me. Like all I wanted to was to make like the 49er faithful, like me and love me, you know, and like you're trying so hard and it's such a shitty motivation, you know, but that's where I was young. And again, this is the first time I've ever struggled, Shane. This is like the first time I've ever dealt with anything even like this. And I think you mentioned it, at the core of it, and it's in all sports because of this like masculinity thing, but especially football, because you got to be a tough football player. And so like for me, I pushed this all down. I bottled it all up, right? I definitely tried to hide this and pretend like it wasn't happening and that I was tough and strong and could get through this.
Was there any teammate that came and like put their arm around you and said, "Yo, man, you got it. Just keep going"? Like, do you remember specific players when you were young that took you under their wing and saw that?
Listen, I had some amazing teammates and coaches. Like, listen, I got drafted with Frank Gore, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame here shortly. He's like one of the greatest football players of all time, in my opinion, and incredibly close with him. And he was with me through all of these ups and downs, and constantly, would put his arm around me. But like, it was hard because like he's crushing it though. You know, at this point, he's already like all pro. It didn't hit home.
Your interceptions probably helped him get more carries. So of course he had his arm around
the moment that did though, Shane, and this is the moment. It goes back to the Just Live shirt that I wear a lot, and I talk about this in the TED Talk, is the guy that I like looking back in my entire career that really helped change my life was this guy named Blake Costanzo, Shane, and he undrafted, 3rd string linebacker. I don't know where he went to college. Like I couldn't tell you. It some tiny little school, and he was. On every NFL team, you have these core special teams guys. There's like 5 of them, and they're on punt return, kickoff return. And these guys are crazy. And they're all backups, but they can all run down the field and make open field tackles and blocks. And you got to be a little nuts to do this, right? Like we've seen, even in that time span, kickoff return has been completely changed because of how dangerous a play it is, right? Like you got to, and I think to go succeed in that environment, you have to go to a place mentally, like you gotta go to the edge, right? Like, and so Blake he just had this infectious energy that he played with. Kind of the crazy man, right? This guy was a little crazy, like we would joke about in the locker room, and flying down on kickoff and kickoff return, and he's bouncing around like before the opening kickoff out there, getting ready to run down the field and take on a 300-pounder. Like this guy was just, you know, he took himself to a place mentally to that edge. And he had this thing before games, and he kind of said it all the time, but like definitely game days, like as you come in Sunday morning, to kind of like paint a picture, like you only play once a week, right? So like the anxiety crank just gets turned up as you creep towards Sunday, right? So like Monday it's at its lowest, and Tuesday, and then Wednesday, the work week, you start, and like every day it just mounts and gets cranked up a little bit. Well, like it is at its peak. You get all dressed up, you stay in the hotel the night before, you have your final meetings, you know, you get dressed up and you show to the locker room, you know, 3-4 hours before kickoff, and you get in there and not a lot of people are talking. Like the energy is thick, you know, the anxiety's thick, and you know, maybe some people are playing some music, but it's palpable. Like it's very real. And he would come in, man, and he would come in with like his 5-hour energies, and he would run around the locker room, and he would like get in everybody's face. He would do this. He would like come over to me and be like, "Shane, are you going to live today?" He'd be like, "'Cause I'm going to live." Right. And he would like brag about it, like live, like in living. And I didn't know what he meant at the time. Like the first time he said it, I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? You know? And it was just so cool to see him embrace the challenge of that, right? Like Sundays and everything that represented. And he was like taking it on, right? This is freaking hard. And I'm up for it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to be present is really how I learned to be like. And my entire years prior to that, I was not present. I mean, I was in my own head, and my head was going, 1,000 different places with just all of this bad self-talk. And again, like his actions and then the words that backed it up really had this profound impact on me. Again, and you want to talk about glue guy, this guy doesn't start. Like nobody knows this guy's name. And here I am, the starting quarterback, and the guy changed my career. And I stole that. It became this challenge to me then. And I'm like, well, I'd been doing it the other way for several years at this point, and it had been terrible results, right? Like, and I was like, I could even just feel like how its effect on me 24/7. And again, here I saw Blake doing it a different way, like taking it head on. And for me, it was like finally this wake up call, like, I want to try that, right? Let me go try that way. And for the rest of my career and life, I still use this. Like it is a challenge to myself whenever I feel like anxiety kick in and bad self-talk. Like, are you going to live? Like, can you live? Can you be present? Can you block out all that crap that doesn't matter, right? Like those distractions, whether they be internal or external, and like be present and live. And like, I think this even, you talk about this, Shane, like embracing the suck. Like you got to like take this stuff on, right? If you ever have a chance to move past it. And so Blake's that guy for me. Like, changed my career. Was hugely pivotal for me. Like when I got benched for the concussion, like when I got traded to Kansas City, when we drafted Patrick Mahomes to be my replacement, right? Like, and certainly helped me when I broke my leg and was like sitting in a wheelchair for 5 months and they're talking about cutting it off. And so I think, to go back to the beginning, it was those things that I struggled with and learned from early on in my career that really like set the stage for me to ever come back and play again after my leg.
I didn't realize it was as broad, the just live idea. You know what I'm saying? I knew that it was a big deal for you, but I didn't realize it was like as impactful, I guess. So dude, like if you go back then, so Blake comes, he's teaching you this mentality, you admire the way he's living, you're going to try and emulate it, right? But I feel like one of the things that, I'm embarrassed to say this, but before you told me, like, I don't think I realized the highs you had in your career before the lows. You know what I'm saying? And so like, where does it go? Okay, all of a sudden you embrace the just live, you start to play, Harbaugh comes, all of a sudden you're balling. Like what happens then?
Yeah, I'm glad you said Harbaugh because he was at the exact same time. This was happening the same time that Blake came on the roster, and I'm learning this. Harbaugh gets hired, and that wasn't a coincidence that it coincided with. I think a really an inflection point in my career that those happened at the same time. And Harbaugh's a guy that played 15 years. He played my position. He played quarterback. Like I grew up in San Diego. Harbaugh played for the San Diego Chargers. Like I watched him play. And then he coached at Stanford when I was, here with the Niners. So it's like right down the street. I saw his success, and then wham, we hire him. And Jim also like, I think he's a quirky dude, but I think one of his greatest strengths is like Jim does not give a shit what anybody thinks about him, right? Like he does not.
Swisher stuck into the khakis.
Yes, like at the press conferences with the media, he would wear these pleated khakis and tuck his sweatshirt in, right? And he loved it. He like owned it. He wears his glasses on purpose. Like even now, he still does some of these same things. Because I think he just like he's gonna own this. But the way he talked to the team, and again, it was all about the team. But his final words, again, to go back to like right before kickoff, you're in the locker room again. This environment that I just stated, like it is thick and tense. His final words before every single game, the last words the head coach would say to the team before they ran out and took the field, he would say, play as hard as you can, as fast as you can, for as long as you can, and don't worry. His last two words were don't worry. Like, and for me, I'd spent my entire career up to that point doing it like as a professional, worrying. That's exactly what I did. I worried about everything, right? And I felt like he really connected with me. And again, he was confronting it, like this idea of, it's there. He knows it. He wore the pads for 15 years. He knows guys worry, right? And here he is telling us to play free. Like I try to tell my kids, like, and at this point, I've been a professional for 6, 7, 8 years at this point, and he's still saying these same things.
Jim Harbaugh is also coming from the college ranks. So again, we talk about, the difference between kind of a college mentality and a pro mentality. It's very subtle, but he brought that personal touch. And you're not going to find too many pro coaches in any sport saying, "Hey, don't worry," right? Just like you're not going to find any Fortune 500 CEOs, saying to their executive team, "Hey, don't worry, it'll all work out."
But I think this thing of like to me, I love the acknowledgement of it. That's cool. Of like, look, man, we all fucking know you're going to get worried, right? Like you play once a week, you play 16 games times a year. So I like that that's cool that he embraced it. And then it's so funny. You talk about the play free, like in a completely different context. That's like something I say all the time to people at work, at home. I'm just like, hey, like, because the only way we're having any chance is if you play. But I also remember, like, as a fan, I remember watching him with the quarterback, with you, like the pumping on the shoulder pads.
Oh, right before, like the last thing, he'd smack you around. Oh, like I remember the first time he did it. And again, you got all these nerves. And as quarterbacks, you don't hit all week. You don't get touched. You got these yellow jerseys on, right? Like you're untouchable. And so like here you are finally on Sundays once a week, you're not. You got the ball in your hand and the Sharks are coming, right? Like they're coming to get you. And so I remember I'm getting ready to run out. I got all this like pent up, anxiety and energy and excitement, and him coming over and he just starts pounding on my shoulder pads and my chest and smacking me in the head. And it was also this physical deal that it kind of relaxed me, right? Like it helped get some of that energy like at bay, and that was even kind of a physical like manifestation of the same things he was talking about, right? Like get ready to go, man, embrace this, And I think there was also in that moment, like there was this longing that, and he didn't talk about it a lot, but I knew he was jonesing to like strap it up one more time, right? Yeah, totally. And that he very much, I could tell, and he didn't talk like this. It wasn't like the old guys that would come in a lot. We would get these like, you guys are so lucky to play and it's going to be over before you know it. And like, you would like tune that out as a player, like, yeah. But like Jim, it was like, you could feel how much he wanted to one more time put the shoulder pads and helmet on and go out there. Right. And like, I appreciated that. Like that made me also think like, you know what, like this is going to be over for me, maybe real soon, like depending like on my trajectory at that point. And, like, fuck it. Like I'm gonna definitely, make them. I'm gonna be present from now on.
That also though, dude, it's like the actions instead of the words. Like someone could say the fucking thing, it's gonna be over before you know it. When this dude's jamming on your shoulder pads, trying to fucking hit you, and like you can feel it. That's just like so different, improving it like that.
And this is just a little side thing. And Shane, I don't know if you've ever had these guys. He was not a good luck coach, and I say this in the sense that I was with a lot of coaches that like. Again, I go back to the same environment. Sunday before kickoff in the locker room, and they'd come around and be like, "Good luck." And I remember thinking like, "Good luck? Aren't you fucking coming out with us? Like, we're in this together, man. Like, what are you telling me good luck for? Like, call good plays. Like, you got a job to do. Like, your job's not over. And like, there's a lot of these guys that I call them, they're good luck coaches. And the great coaches are definitely not that, right? Like, they are in it with you. Like, yeah, they can't run out there in between the lines, but like, every bit of them's on board and fighting till the last whistle to do anything they can to help the team, right? And like, and Jim was not that, right? Like you definitely felt his commitment, and how on board he was.
Well, Alex, talk about being there when your replacement gets drafted. All right, it's a very strange phenomenon. All right, it's doesn't happen a lot in the corporate world, I guess you could say. Every now and then the CEO may bring in someone to the executive team that write it on the wall to replace you. And in sports, there's much more of a direct correlation. I went through that when I was in Memphis. I got drafted number 6 by the Memphis Grizzlies in 2006. And 2 years later, they drafted a kid named Drew Gooden, who was a great player. He was a power forward. Jerry West, who just passed away, drafted him because he never liked me and he wanted to replace me with this Drew Gooden guy. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This guy's a power forward. I'm a small forward, right? And so the dynamic in that first day in the locker room, when you know that this guy was brought in to take your spot, is a very primal feeling. So please walk us through sort of draft day and your first impressions of this kid named Mahomes with a strong arm out of Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think a couple things that led up to that helped me in that situation was one I'd already kind of dealt with it a little bit. We drafted Colin Kaepernick, when I was at the Niners, and he wasn't the 10th overall pick, but he was like the second pick in the second round, and definitely, crazy talented. Also had a little bit of heir apparent there, and we were even closer in age, so that was a little more like what you're talking about. I wasn't like the old man at that point. And I think, again, that kind of coincided with Harbaugh and Blake as my teammate, and me really kind of getting refocused and, again, appreciating the challenge of it and being present. And I had played well, and then I lost that job with a concussion, and Cap came in and rolled, like went on a historic run, and I found myself getting traded, and I got traded to Kansas City. And again, it was such a weird coincidence that the Kansas City had the number 1 pick. They had the same record the year before as I did with the Niners, and it was like the second chance, and how cool it was. And I just took like that entire, like, are you going to live today kind of mindset with me. Like, I'm not going to be distracted anymore. And wham, I'm off and running. And it, obviously a lot to do with the teammates and coaches I had too. And, I'm going to Pro Bowls and we're going to the playoffs, and man, this is amazing, right? Like, I feel like all that time I'd put in was paying off. And I'm just like, I'm growing. My slope as a company is going up, Ravi. Like, what I'm saying? That's what I was gonna say.
Like, I feel like we have like this part of like, it's just all, you have like ascension.
Yes.
And like, however bad it is, when it's bad in pro sports, like, I don't know, when you're fucking winning and everyone's like, this guy's the man, you're the starting quarterback. Like, I would think that's probably pretty cool. You probably think it's like, I don't know, like that's literally, that's the dream.
Yeah. Well, and like validation, finally, like here it is 10 years later, like that same 20-year-old kid, like I like this validation, and it didn't come from like hunting it, right? Like, again, like just embracing the challenge. And again, all these things we've said, but it's there, and I'm rolling and I'm playing, and I'm just getting better and better every year. And then you said it, Shane, they draft this kid number 10 overall. They move up. I knew they loved him. They'd been talking about him for a couple of years. Like, I had a great relationship with the GM and assistant GM and the quarterback room, and they would always pop in the QB room and be like, hey, what do you think of this guy? And I always asked him too. Like, I loved college football. So like, I'd always ask him, hey, is there anybody coming out of Utah? Or like, I'd ask him about this quarterback. And so I knew they loved Patrick, and I knew there was a chance we were going to take him. And that's the one thing I think that Andy did a great job of in a difficult situation, is he communicated, right? Like, I wasn't surprised. It was not the Kirk Cousins having no idea they were going to draft, Michael Penix. Like, I knew there was a great chance that we were drafting him. And so, and then we did. And I think a couple of things kicked in right there, Shane, is one, I was determined to not be distracted again. I was not any longer. Again, this was still very fresh in my mind. I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder as I go take the field, like, or on the practice anytime. I'm not going to do that, right? Like, I'm going to be locked in on the details and hyper focused. And then the other thing, there was a ton of empathy for me for Patrick. Like, I had been the top pick, and I remember how miserable that rookie year was by myself in the film room, having no idea what I was doing. No one helped to show me how to look at third down tapes or blitz reels, or how to change protections at the line, or how to deal with, prima donna receivers, or like, like just all these things. Like, I had none of it. It took me a long time and a lot of mistakes to ever learn. And so there was this empathy that Patrick didn't pick this situation. I didn't pick this situation. And that his path and my path were not contradictory, right? As much as the media wanted to make that, like, me reaching my potential had nothing to do with the player Patrick was going to become, right? Like, and I knew that, again, if I was going to be distracted by it, like, I wouldn't become the best player I could be, or teammate. And I was determined to be down that path. And so that was at the start of it. And then I think what really makes it work is respect, right? Between him and I. Like, that's the only way that room works, is there's just this mutual respect. You give respect, you get respect. And Patrick and I, like, hit it off, as weird as it is, like, to say that. Like, we spent so much time together. When you're in the QB room, and again, during the season, once training camp starts, like, I'm spending more time with him than I am with my wife and kids, for 6 months. Like, that's what it looks like. And you're eating meals together, and you're training together and you're practicing together and you're watching film again. Like it just is a grind and you're doing it. And the way the QB room worked in Kansas City and the tone was set like this again from Andy. I didn't know it at the time, but Andy's directive to Patrick was everywhere Alex goes, you go. Like that's your job, right? Like you whatever he does, you do. And you know, like that was the motto. We had the QB room text chain and like it was constantly like, what time we starting tomorrow? What time we going in? Like, and it was just, we never did anything by ourselves. And you really built like a very cool relationship and leaned on each other. And it was to the point like, cause you would always love it. Like in the middle of the season, you know, on a Thursday night and I'm, you know, say we just lost a game and we're putting in third down plays and I'm trying to pick up this blitz. Like there could be these minute things where I want opinion. I want in a second opinion. Hey, coach is telling me this, but I'm like, hey, he leaves the room and I'm like, hey, Patrick, what do you really think about this? Like, what if I did this instead? Like, it's so nice to have that sounding board sometimes of a guy that like knows what it's like to have been in that pocket when the bullets are flying and like can give you some feedback. And the great places build those kind of environments. And Kansas City was like that. And Patrick was like that with me. You know, there definitely was a...
Alex, do you think that Andy, like you were obviously, you're a great dude. You had the empathy, you felt it. And like, you know, you were going to not be a dick to Patrick. You were going to help him, right? But Andy helped that by communicating with you and all that stuff. Do you think that he could have done that with somebody who didn't have your personality too? Like, would he have adjusted his style and still been able to make that successful? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think he would have adapted. Andy's a strong leader. And I think one of his biggest strengths is dealing with personalities, right? And different personalities and like not turning, you know, molehills into mountains, right? Like I think he does a great job of just kind of squashing all that stuff. So I think he would have worked it out. I do think though, and you know, this kind of goes back to, I think, you know, how do you build teams and talent? And like, I do think glue guys, like team players, like that's the core of teams. And like the first thing Andy did the first year in Kansas City was he totally revamp all of that, right? Like you've got to build the core of your culture. And we had built it for 5 years, right? And I think at that point, he definitely obviously knew who I was. So this was very planned. He was very purposeful by it. And it's brilliant. Like in hindsight, it's brilliant. Like how many teams just flip a coin and draft a QB and don't have a plan? And like Andy had a plan. And I was a part of that. Like, and in the middle of it, like sometimes it's tough to see, but I mean, if you're a football fan and you have to admire that, right? Like how fluid that transition was. And look and it's paid off. I mean, 3 rings later, like, you know, it's obviously more than paid off.
Now, did you take your own advice and did you play free, or did you start looking over your shoulder again and worry about the expectations and you know, you're all of a sudden you're a Pro Bowl quarterback and you're protecting something, you know, did your mentality change at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of things. One, it was very apparent as the year went on that Patrick was really good and also very professional. Like I think the thing that gets lost in his amazing playmaking is like the grind. Like Patrick's super smart, crazy hardworking, and like he wins there just as much as he does doing the crazy sidearm no look throws. Probably more, I should say. But so that was there, and no, I was again determined that I wasn't going to be distracted, and like I think I had hardened myself enough with like my habits that I was ready for that, and I ended up having my career year without a doubt. I mean, I was in the MVP conversation till the end of the season, didn't get it, but absolutely had my career year without a doubt. And we ended up losing in the playoffs, which was kind of, you know, surmises my time in Kansas City. And that was it. Like I knew I was going, like, you know, that was, I was on the trading block.
You got traded the year after the career year?
Oh yeah.
You got traded the summer after yeah. Oh wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Cause also it has to do with contracts. Like where my contract was, they didn't want to let me hit free agency. So it's like trade you with a year left versus, you know, they couldn't have, if they would have waited another year, I probably wouldn't have signed an extension, and then you're not getting any value. And that's another masterpiece of Andy Reid, right? Like how many times has he traded guys for picks? So, and I think only reinforced that entire year and experience, although we lost in the playoffs, but whatever, like it only reinforced all of these beliefs that I had accumulated, like how to attack, I think, hard things at that point, adversity. Again, for me, attention to details, controlling what you can control, like eliminating distractions, your own included. Like those are all things. Like, are you going to live? Like became my mantra for sure. I at that point, I was such a believer in all that stuff. And then I get traded the second time here to Washington. That no, I was like, man, let's go. I just had my career year 12. Like I'm only getting better still. I felt like I could have played 12 more years at that point. I'd been really lucky physically, and let's go. I mean, I was only emboldened, I think.
And how old are you when you got traded to Washington?
I just played 12 years, so I was 32.
Okay. And so do you, at this point, you're married? Do you have...
Yeah, married, kids, all 3 kids.
The reason I bring this up is like, to me, one of the things I worry about a lot is like, look, you sometimes think you kind of like had your struggles, and like now you're on the other side of them and you're like a finished product. And so to me, I'm kind of envisioning you of like, look, like I've learned my lessons. I'm 32. I'm married. I'm a father. Like I got this, like I'm good. And so the reason I bring that up is like, then the fucking leg happens. And it's like, after you already did the work, you already had the lessons. And so like, is that what it felt like at all? Or what? Absolutely.
That was my mindset at that point. I had learned so much in my 12 years, and I knew what it looked like at that point, and I knew how to get there. And I had really, I think, also taken a lot of pride in my style. I had stopped trying to be other people along that way, right? And like, I was very comfortable in how I could go win football games and play quarterback, and had kind of taken that back on. And that was part of the thing. Like when you get traded, you don't have a lot of control where you get traded, but both places I was lucky enough that they let me have a little input. And even one of the things with Washington is I knew from the outside there was some dysfunction, right? Like ownership down. I knew that there was a tumultuous place, but like a little bit that attitude you're saying, like I kind of wanted it. I'm like, I think I can quiet the noise, right? Like I think I can go there. It was a young, talented team, and I thought like I could be the difference. And I firmly believed that. And I wanted that to happen. That was a destination that for sure I was pumped when that all worked out, because I thought like I could be the difference maker, and felt like I was for 10 weeks, Ravi. Like we were 2 games up in the division. I felt like I was like, again, like I felt like I had a positive impact on that locker room. It was a young team.
Like I'm a glue guy, but I'm a leader. I'm fucking doing it.
Yeah, I was like, again, here I am going into year 13. All like when you're a dinosaur at that point in an NFL locker room, but like I'd been to playoff games and Pro Bowls and stuff. Like none of those guys had ever done anything like that. And so and really felt like I could help a culture change. And again, felt like we were doing it for 10 weeks. And we were kicking ass. Like everything was a lock. Like we were rolling. And then fucking JJ Watt, man, I broke my leg and, started this. And again, I felt like I had been, like to your point, I had been through all these things, hard things. I'd been through them. I was, hardened and resilient. And then, I was not prepared for that at all. What the journey that kicked me down, a compound fracture of my leg, tib fib, emergency surgery that night, infection sets in, flesh-eating bacteria on my leg. I get down, I'm minutes, hours from them cutting off my leg.
I want to hear the entire story, because like the perfect storm and sort of the butterfly effect of every little thing that happens in a football play, something that you spend hours on every single week. And if one component is off, it's catastrophe. Right. And like basketball, a little bit different, only 5 guys. So, and it's a game of errors, and you're constantly covering them up. So if one guy messes up, you kind of expect it. But in football, everything is such a coordinated ballet between blocking and passing and tackling and space, that if just someone's off by a foot, disaster strikes. So like walk us through like that week when you told us a story about everybody who's involved on that fateful day.
Yeah, you said it. And I think you actually like really did a great job kind of summarizing what offensive football is. Like it is a ballet. Like it is coordination and timing, and if 11 guys aren't working in concert, like it doesn't happen. Defensively is very different. Like if you have if Aaron Donald's playing D tackle and just wrecks the play, like if you're the left corner, you could have blown it, but like it doesn't matter because like you cover up for each other. Like on offense, everybody could be doing their job, and if like one guy fucks up, like the whole play is a disaster. Like it very much takes all 11 coordinated effort. And yeah, like so we're playing the Texans, and I'll never forget it. Like that whole week, they had like a really exotic kind of a blitz packages, you know. And again, like this was like my bread and butter. I felt like I can snuff this out. Like I can use my cadence. I'm at home. I can get them to show it. And I'll never forget. You go over these protection meetings during the week. And I remember them, they presented this, like they try to present like they're coming from the left. Like, let me just like put it very like elementary. Like the way they're lined up, they're trying to show you that it's coming to the left, but very much at the snap, it's going to spin and they're actually coming from the right. And I remember, so they put all their big guys over there to the left to kind of show this. And I remember like there were a bunch of little tells that gave it away though. And all week, I'm like, I'm not going to slide the line to those guys. I know it's coming the other way, right? So I'm going to protect it. And you know, I know it. And all week the coaches fought me like, no, this is just the way we want to do it because it's for everybody else. Like it just makes it easy that every time the bigs are over there, the O-line's just going to go, and then the running back's going to scan and make this right. And like they just wanted to keep it like very simple.
What do you mean keep it simple? What are you talking about?
Yeah, like, and I'm going along with it. I don't, because one of those things I really wish I obviously would have pushed back on, you know, but I didn't. I'm like, fine, sure. Like, and the downside of this is you don't get your running back out. Is really like the ultimate. Like your running back then gets used up on the protection and you lose your fifth receiver. And I was like, fine. It was like one play, one protection that I didn't push back on, and I was like, fuck it, fine. And I did it. And so sure enough, it's a third down. I can remember it. I remember like in my head in this moment as I come up, I'm like, they fucking did it. Like they're showing it. Like, cause most defenses, they'll show a blitz and then like they give it a few weeks off and then you'll see it again a couple weeks later. And like, that's how they try to like, you know, have variance. So I knew it. And I'm like, boom, there it is. They showed all these guys over here to the left. I freaking know it's coming over here on the other side though. And I like, it was this, you know, it like slowed down for me. It felt like slow motion that I had this whole little internal conversation of like, which way am I going to do it here? And I was like, fine. I listened to the coaches. I turned the line to the left to the big fellas here. I know the slot. I know the nickel's coming off the edge to the right. And then also like thrust in this, Shane, is like, you're also trying to block JJ Watt, right? Like, you know, the 3-time defensive player of the year. And so he breaks through, and wouldn't you know it, we missed the guy coming off the slot to the right. And so you kind of have these two free players. And, you know, as a quarterback, it's all situational awareness, right? Like that's how you learn to play. Like you learn to compartmentalize all these different situations that encompass one game and a season. And we were across the 50, I think at that point, and kind of midfield though. And I remember just like conceding in my head, like, oh, they got me, and protecting the football. Right? Like that was my job in that moment. Like it's third down, they got us, protecting the football and kind of like getting into, you know, to absorb a hit. And I've taken, 1,000 worse hits in my career. And for some reason in that one, like leg goes fuzzy and, you know, I hold on to the ball, but it was a feeling I'd never felt before in my leg. And can remember kind of happening together, kind of the yells of teammates. And then as I kind of rolled over and looked at my leg, it bending where it shouldn't, you know, and like that, you know, obviously like a very alarming, you know, thought, right? Like there is no more like, you know, I fucking broke my leg. There was no doubt about it. Like I knew I broke my leg. But then I, you know, kind of mixed emotions. Like it didn't hurt in that moment. And again, here I was 13 years into a career playing, you know, football's a violent game. I've had countless teammates have broken bones. Like it's just a part of football. I, for whatever reason, had never broken a bone in my life to that point. Never.
What?
And yeah, never broken a bone. And so I remember thinking, well, I broke my leg, it's broken. And I remember the distinct feeling of like, we were far enough into the season that like the season's probably over for me. But we got the best doctors in the world, right? Like the best care in the world. And I distinctly remember having this like very naive thought that like, they'll put me back together, you know, whatever they have to do. And I should be back by spring ball. This was November 18th. it's a day that's like obviously changed my life. And I remember thinking like, oh, by March, I'll be fully back and rolling and I'll be good to go for OTAs. Like that was my thought process in that moment. And doctors running out. And I remember telling them like, it's broken. Right. And they're like trying to like do their own, like, discovery. And I'm like, no. It's broken. Like, it's like, that's what it is.
It's fucking sticking out of your skin.
It was on the backside. Like you couldn't see it, but yeah, we didn't discover that till later, but yeah, then finally, air cast it on and carted off the field, and then pain setting in, and jump in the ambulance and fucking sent off to so I had emergency surgery that night because we discovered the compound, the bone had broke the skin. So emergency surgery that night, and I woke up the next day, Shane, to like great news. Like the surgery had gone really, really well. They put 3 plates in my leg and like 32 screws, and everything looked really well aligned. And I needed to stay a couple days for observation and like pass my occupational therapy, PT, little things they make you do. You have to show you can get around on crutches before they let you go. And then I'd be home. And, like kind of the biggest hurdle was done, and, start the road to recovery. And I luckily never made it out of the hospital, and, went into septic shock 2 days later, right before I was supposed to get discharged, and infection had set into my leg. And it had turned into what's called necrotizing fasciitis, which is like a fancy word for flesh-eating bacteria. And it was starting to eat at my leg. And once this sets in, it spreads really quickly, and it's dead tissue. Like it's not coming back. And so I was rushed into emergency surgery, and I went in like 2 straight weeks of surgeries, essentially, from there on. They call them debridements, and it's essentially they just amputating part of your leg every time they go in. So they would just start cut out the infected tissue, and then the next day I'd go in and they would cut out more, and then they would cut out more and cut out more, and this went on for about 2 weeks, and finally till they got it under control. And then that whole time, I'm, when you're going under anesthesia every single day, you don't ever regain like full consciousness. So this is all like a very much a fog for me. And, the touch and go at that point, as far as like cutting my leg off and getting this thing under control and getting me on the right antibiotics. And finally they luckily like amazing save by the doctors to like get it all out and get the infection under control. And I wake up 2 weeks later. For me, this all happens like a flash, like these 2 weeks. Like I wake up 2 weeks later, kind of my last memory was surgery went well and I'm going to be great. I'm totally good to go. And then flash forward like 2 weeks, I'm waking up now with a huge team of doctors in front of me in the hospital room. And, they're telling me what had happened, right? That like half my leg is already gone. And I have this severe broken leg still, obviously, and most doctors thinking amputation is probably the best thing at that point. Like at my knee, gonna amputate, and that'd be the best thing for me. And like obviously, again, you think you're prepared for things. Like I was playing a freaking game, and then all of a sudden you wake up, and they're talking about cutting your leg off, and you get punched in the face like that. Like, how did we even get here? Like, it took me so long to even digest that and understand it, and didn't want to believe it. And kind of obviously sent me down the path of like a 2-year rehab, to fight to keep my leg, and then to friggin' try to fucking play football again,
Oh my, God, Jesus Christ. Shane, one thing I told Alex one time, I have trouble playing Madden with the kids playing quarterback because there's too much going on. You know what I'm saying? Of like, I can't figure out where the fucking receivers are. I can't like check the coverage, and it's a fucking video game. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like relatively smart guy, and like I can't process it quick enough. They sack me every time. Like, and I'm just sitting there like, this dude's doing this in real life with your like life on the line. Like, it is a genuinely insane thing that quarterbacks do. Like all the things you just went through. Like, yeah, they're showing this, they're gonna do this. Like, and then I have to check all these reads. It is just a ridiculous position. But anyway, so Alex, so you wake up, the doctor's in front of you. Okay. And, they've been talking to your family. They've been talking to other people that love you. Did you have a moment? You said you're saving your leg. Did you have a moment first of just like, maybe I should let him cut it off? Because like, do you see what I'm saying? Did you consider that
Oh yeah. So when I wake up, I probably didn't do a good job painting this picture. Like when I woke up 2 weeks later, I was at the precipice of, I was a fork in the road, and I had the decision, and the majority of the doctors in the room kind of advocating for amputation probably is the best bet. That it was the cleanest outcome for me and the quality of the rest of my life. And one doctor in the room, his name is Vineet Meehan, was crazy enough and confident enough that he said, I think I can save your leg. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to take your own body parts from your healthy part of your body, from your back, from your left leg, and I'm going to move them down I'm going to Frankenstein your own body, and I'm going to move them down onto your lower right leg in hopes that we can save this, right? And it's going to be multiple surgeries. And there's no guarantee it takes, because actually we could move these muscles down and like they actually die. And then we're going to try it again, right? And we'll try a different muscle or something. And you're going to have to wear this cage on your leg, and then we're going to skin graft over it if it takes. And this is all in hopes to just save your leg. And you're not getting any ability back, by the way. So like I had lost lots of muscle and tendons and nerves. And like this wasn't to get any of that back. This is literally like just a giant meat shin guard that they're going to transfer down over the top of this broken bone in hopes that it can help heal it, right? Like, because the broken bones don't heal without blood supply. Like, and so you need all this like tissue over it to bring blood so that this can heal. So like the prognosis was like, your leg's not going to be, you're not gonna be able to use your leg. You're just going to keep it. And we're going to do all these surgeries to do that. And no doubt about it, something in his confidence, I remember in that moment. And I kind of had to choose pretty quickly, right? Like this wasn't something I got to like deliberate on for a month, you know, like it's like make the decision. And I'm still like just trying to like digest, obviously, how we even got here. How did I get here? And, you know, he's one of these people, like, obviously, like, yeah, that moment he changed my life. He was in the room, he was on call, like he came in and I went with his route. I decided to like,
shout out to the Indian doctor who saved the fucking day.
Vineet,
I'm guys, still, remember Shane, your original name for this podcast? Okay.
Yes.
Indians are shining right now.
Well, Ravi, there's 2 billion Indians, so it was a good chance it probably was an Indian guy that was the doctor.
Hey man, hey, look, all I'm just saying, Vineet Mahan, okay, saving the day.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. I love my Hindu brothers. I love them. So is the mindset right now, you know, just yeah, okay, let's do it. I'm gonna play. This is a possibility. I mean, like, where's that even like enter your mind? I mean, you're thinking about like, can I play with my kids? Can I take a walk with my wife? Right? Like real life shit that really matters, right? Not stupid football, right?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Like I'm like, yeah, fuck football at this point. I'm also having a giant pity party. Like I cannot get past what the rest of my life is going to look like. Right. And you know this, Shane, like I was an old guy in the locker room at that point, but like very much you put off a lot when you're playing. Right. Like, and I never thought I'd play that long. And so you just put things off. Like I'd had kids and like, you just put things off and I'm like, we'll do that later. We got the rest of our life to go do that stuff. And then all of a sudden this happened. And I'm like, I distinctly remember just sitting there, and I was in the hospital room for over a month. Even then, when I got discharged, I had this giant fucking steel cage bolted to my leg, right from my foot to my upper thigh. Like I can't bend my knee. It is this, and I'm stuck in a wheelchair for months and months and months. And again, huge unknown. They're still talking about like amputation is not fully off the table at this point, and I like cannot get past exactly what you're saying, Shane. Like I will never be able to chase my kids around ever again. Like I'll never be able to ride a bike. I'll never be able, like all these moments as my kids get older, my boys, like I'll never be able to go do these things with them. Right. I'll never be able to go on a walk with my wife. Like the most simplest, like purest things in life, like they're gone. And I'm like, again, I'm in my own head. Like they're not coming back. And I cannot stop just replaying these images of like these things I took for granted are never coming back, and just consumed in them. So I'm like kind of just looking in the rearview mirror, if that makes sense. Like the rearview mirror of my life and all these things I'll never be able to do again, and a huge pity party. And football did this to me.
So where do you get the resilience? Someone hearing your story for the first time, like what, like people were like, holy crap, like I couldn't do that. I couldn't, like, so where did you dig deep? Like, where did you find the strength to not only like survive, keep your leg, but like thrive? I mean, this is like an insane story. This is insane.
This is what I really enjoy, like talking about and being open about this. Nobody does crazy, audacious things by themselves, right? Like it does not. That is a fallacy. Like that is a Disney story that is not true. And I really enjoy like being open about my, like, again, like, no, I was thinking of, like, couldn't have been in a worse place mentally for 4 months, 5 months. Like, again, I'm stuck in a wheelchair. I can only be in, like my wife had to outfit the entire house with ramps because I'm in a wheelchair. And I can only go on the first floor. And there's really only 2 places in the house I can either be. It's on my bed or it's this spot on the couch. And I can't even be left alone. I got a PICC line that goes to my heart because I have to do antibiotic drips every single day to still keep this crazy infection under control. My wife can't even leave me alone. I'll never forget. It was this big step. Like my oldest son at that point, is like 7, 8 years old. Okay. And again, this giant metal cage I had on was super heavy on my right leg. And they had taken one of my quad muscles from my left leg down. And so my left leg's weakened. And so like I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. Right? Like I needed help to go to the bathroom. And it was like, and I'll never forget when my wife felt comfortable enough that like my 7-year-old son had to help me lift up this metal cage that's bleeding. Like I got screws and pins that are like open wounds. They're bleeding and oozing. It's disgusting. And he's strong enough to lift it up because he needs to do this so that I can like go to the bathroom. And I'll never forget when like that moment happened because my wife could leave me with him for like short little runs. Like, you know, she could go run errands. And my oldest son, who's 7, like I was the liability. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you went from like the dad, like the provider of your house, like these are my kids. Like all of a sudden I'm helpless. And what a big moment that was that my son could help me go to the bathroom so that my wife could go like run errands and leave him alone with me. And I don't know what that felt like for him, like your dad's stuck in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Jesus Christ.
I was completely worthless is like what I'm like getting at. Like I was like a giant suck on the household, like just 24/7 maintenance. And I kind of wallowed in that for a long time, just wallowing in that. It coincided with winter in DC, which was like crappy weather. I'm just sitting there, just shitty attitude, staring outside at like snow and sleet and rain, and couldn't take part in my kid's life. Like, so my kid's life goes on, right? They have like their activities in school, and I can't take part in any of it because I can't go anywhere. Like I'm stuck. My wife had to rent a van, like a wheelchair accessible van, and like I could go either to the doctor or just stay at the house. Like that was it. And in that moment, I got what was called my doctor, the team doctor for Washington. I didn't know it at the time, but had applied for this thing called the Secretary of Defense designation. And this is something for civilians who are deemed to have what's called a warlike injury. And if they get granted this, they get access to military medical care. And the unique thing there was, if you tear your ACL or like your Achilles, like that happened, there is a roadmap of all the people that have done it before you and hopefully progress that they've made. And then you follow like the latest, right? Like the last great success story they have this roadmap and you follow it, right? And hopefully you add to that. Well, like there were no athletes that had gone through anything even close to this. Like nobody. There was nobody for me to look to, like no like seeds of hope. Like, hey, look at this person. So, and I didn't know it at the time, but the closest thing, actually, believe it or not, was the military. And through like the last 30 years in the Middle East and like roadside bombs and IEDs and loads of our servicemen and women came back with lower leg injuries. And as crazy as it is, mine at that point roughly resembled it, right? Like I had this crazy broken leg. I had a bunch of tissue damage from them dissecting my leg and removing this, and all these like limb salvage procedures to save it. And that was kind of actually what happened to a lot of them that had come back. And some of these soldiers were crazy enough to go back to service and had found a way through rehab and bracing that they had gone back. Like some of these kind of, Rangers and Navy SEALs had gone back to service and functioned at a high level. And so that was like the closest thing for me. And I'll never forget, long story short, I get granted this Secretary of Defense designation, and it's literally signed off by the Secretary of Defense. And so I get granted access to military medical care. And there is this center in San Antonio. It's called the Center for the Intrepid. And it's part of the Brooks Army Hospital like center down there. And it doesn't matter what branch of the military you're in. If you have a limb injury, like a severe limb injury, this is where you go. It's one place, right? It could be anywhere in the world. I don't care what branch of the military you're in. If you have a severe limb injury, you go here for rehab. And I got granted access. And again, long story short, if that hadn't happened, I never would have uttered the words, I want to play football again, and never would have gone down this journey. And my life would look a lot different right now, is the truth. And that team, the military team that I got to kind of, co-op for a little while, changed my life.
What was it like when you were there? Like you're around a bunch of military people, you're not around a bunch of football players. And like, how long did it take for you to go from having the pity party to something else?
So I couldn't travel when I was in the wheelchair to go down there ever. And I finally got the metal cage that I had in my leg. So again, it's running from my upper thigh to my foot. So like my whole right leg's just like locked out with this giant metal cage bolted into the bone. And I finally got to a point with the surgeries and the limb salvage that they got to shrink it. So they put a smaller one on me that went from just below my knee down to my foot. So smaller, but still this metal cage. And that meant that I could get out of the wheelchair, so I could get to crutches. And I couldn't still put my foot down. I'm not weight bearing, right? Like it's still some unknowns, but at least I could get vertical. Like I could be upright on crutches. And so it meant I was kind of somewhat mobile at this point for the first time, and got to take my first trip to San Antonio. And so this is like 5 months into my rehab at this point. Well, rehab is sitting around in a wheelchair. And again, so, and to surmise, like to give you a picture of where I was at, my leg is grotesque. It is the most mutilated, mangled looking thing you have ever seen. It is the size of a tree trunk. The skin grafts over it, the donor sites, like it is unrecognizable. It doesn't look like a leg. And again, I got this cage bolted to it. So I kept it wrapped all the time. And my wife would you have to do these pin cleanings and screw cleanings all the time on it. And my wife would do that at home every few days. And the only other time, she saw it, and my kids kind of a little bit when they were around, but it scared them. And then when I went to the doctor, they would unwrap it. And other than that, I kept it wrapped, and I was very much ashamed of it because it was ugly and gross, and it kind of represented like all the things I'll never be able to do again, all the things I lost. It was basically like this good for nothing leg that for some reason I'd been fighting to keep. And so I get down to the military, and one of the things, like certainly like I'm very humbled to be down there, right? Like these guys they literally have sacrificed life and limb protecting us, and I was playing a stupid game, right? And got unlucky with this infection. So I don't really feel like I belong. And one of the unique things, one of the philosophies, the cool philosophies of the Center for the Intrepid is most physical therapy clinics, when you go to them, you check in at the front office, your physical therapist meets you and escorts you back to a private room, and you do your physical therapy in private for 45 minutes, and then you're escorted out and you leave. It's a very one-to-one thing. And so I'd been doing a little bit of that prior to going down there, like in the wheelchair. I had done a little bit of this, and you get down there, and that is not the philosophy of the military, right? They believe in this thing called group suck. Right? The belief that if you do hard stuff, it's going through hard stuff, it's better to do it together. And so they just have this giant open room where everybody does their rehab together, like huge, big open space. And it's this mix mash of like rehab tables and lifting equipment and rehab stuff, and everybody's doing it together. And I get down there again, and I'm ashamed of my leg. I'm hiding behind bandages. I think like my future sucks. And I get down there, and let me tell you this, nobody's hiding behind their bandages, right? Like you're in this huge group, and man, the scars are out in the open. And there are, like, I thought I had it bad. You get down there, man, there's double amputees, triple amputees, horrible burn victims, right? There's a ton of people with the same contraption I have on my leg, that cage. They're also there. It's the first time I've ever seen another person wearing one. And so there was this connection, right? Like, I think, again, this empathy of like, we're all going through bad stuff, but it even put into perspective mine, like how lucky I was actually to still have what I had, right? Like, very much, there were a bunch of amputees down there kicking ass and not moping about. And that example was incredibly powerful for me, right? Like, to see people moving ahead with their life. And one soldier in particular, who was definitely past me. Like, they brought him in. He had kind of been 2 years ahead of me. So it had really kind of gone through something very similar and recovered. And he lived in San Antonio at the time. And he had come in, and he's wearing shorts and flip-flops. I'll never forget it. And I grew up in San Diego. Again, I like shorts and flip-flops are like, that speaks to me. And his leg is crazy looking, right? And I remember asking him, like, how the fuck are you wearing shorts and flip-flops? Like, how do you get there? You're just cruising around life, like, with that leg out like that. And I remember, like, which is kind of a shitty thing to ask in hindsight, you know?
Yeah, but it's real.
I remember he was very cool. Like, I would never forget. He was like, man, I'm telling you, there's going to come a time when you're proud of your leg, like, and everything that it represents. And I remember, like, for me, again, a distinct moment of like, how do I get there? Right? Like, again, like that Blake Costanzo moment. Like, I'm not even close to that. I'm ashamed of my leg. I'm embarrassed by it. And it represents all the other stuff. And it was a really cool example of like a seed of hope, again, of what like maybe did lay ahead for me. And one of the fucking craziest moments, also embedded in this, again, it's been like 5 months. I have not touched a football since my injury. I have this negative attitude towards it. Again, it did this to me. And so I'm going down to the military center. And meanwhile, too, I have two young boys who love football, right? Like, and I go down there, and then this is all on the first day. It was like this overwhelming experience for me. I'm doing my first PT session, and Johnny Owens, the PT, the longtime PT down there, has me get down on my left knee. So my good leg. Again, I still can't be weight bearing on my right leg. So he has me get down on one knee, and he fucking walks out. He goes behind the counter, the PT counter. And again, I'm in this big open room. People are like, shit going on everywhere. And he brings out this football, and he throws it to me. And one of the first things I do in rehab is to play catch. And the last thing I'm ever expecting to see at a military center was a football. Yeah. And it was something done very intentionally by him. Very intentionally. That like this was all planned. And so my first exercise was to sit there on my left knee, and I played catch. And I'll never forget how amazing that was, that like this like aha moment again, that like, oh shit, I can still play catch. Right? Like, I can still play catch with my boys. You know, like they love playing catch with their dad. It's something that I did with my dad. And I'll never forget, like, playing catch, like such a simple thing. And that I can still do this. And it kind of this, well, what else can I go do? Right? And this play, like in the Center for the Intrepid and the people down there, like it changed my life. And later that day, Shane, is the first time I ever said out loud that, like, you know what? I want to see if I can play football again. And they very much pushed me towards that. Like they were the only place in the world that was like, hey, we think you can go do more than everybody else is saying, right? Like there's more ahead of you, and we think we can help you go achieve it. And I was scared shitless when I said it. Because also I had agreed for some reason to document this journey, which is very unlike me. I feel like I'm a pretty private person. And for some reason I'd been talked to, like, I agreed to this. So there's cameras there. And this is documented, right? Like, again, I'm saying this dumbass statement. They're talking about cutting off my leg potentially still. And I'm like, hey, I want to play football again. Like, this sounds fucking stupid. And I didn't care though. And I think in that moment, that's also like, for me, it was getting to a place where, like, I didn't care if I failed. In fact, I kind of thought it was probable, but like, that wasn't the point. The point was for me to chase down as much ability as I had left, because of like, I want to be the best dad I can be, right? And I want to be the best husband I can be. And I want to be the best me that I can be going forward. And this is the way to it, right? It's this like getting to this side of the coin, like attacking struggle again and embracing it. And I very much thought I would fail. I never thought I would actually like play football again when I uttered those words. But again, getting to the point where like, I really didn't care. Like, fear wasn't going to consume me again, like it had at times past. So yeah, like, again, like, so go to teammates like that. Like, if all this hadn't happened, I never would have actually ultimately ever made it back.
You catch yourself sometimes saying, I can't believe that happened. From that day to where you are now, obviously you're a person that has amazing gratitude and expresses it, and amazing vulnerability to be able to share that. Most people wouldn't be able to articulate it just like that. But it almost seems like a movie. It almost seems like a movie.
What are you talking about? If it happened in the movie, you wouldn't believe it. Like, you know what I'm saying, Shane? It's like it's too much to be in the movie, because you'd be like, no, it's too much,
I feel like the same way. Like, I feel like a little bit, even looking back, like, I can't believe I actually ended up there. And so, like, well, I think for me, like, the one defining thing that I feel like kind of ends this well, two stories. So fast forward, COVID hits. I'm going through my rehab. I'm just like plugging along. I keep thinking I'm going to hit a wall, right? Like, the road's going to end for me, the rehab road, and that's fine. I want to find out where that wall is, right? Like, and the final one I can't like bust through, And so I'm just on this mission. I set this goal of like, I want to chase this, right? I want to see if I can do this. And the weird thing is, like, I would do my rehab sessions with a football in my hand, because it like made me feel like it changed my complete attitude. It like, just even holding one, it could be unrelated to football, but if I had it in my hand, it like gave me this energy and purpose. And so like from the next 2 years, I was like, that's what I did. I would do rehab. I had football involved in some way, and I would just like chase this. And I didn't go to rehab like when I couldn't even stand on my leg. I didn't go like, hey, I'm going to play quarterback today. Like, I'm like, no, I got to be able to stand on my leg, right? Like, that's objective number one, like the first step. Like, I got to be able to weight bear. And that's like, I just head down and charged at like that singular thing, like this very small, little attainable goal. And it was just like, I got to be able to put my weight down and stand on my leg. Like, what do I need to do to get there? And PTs and doctors helping me do that. And like, you'd get there, and it was just this amazing feeling, like when you would do it. And, for sure, like a great little celebration. And then it was like, all right, what's next? Right. And it was like, okay, well, I got to be able to weight change. I got to be able to take like literally a baby step. Almost like the analogy, like, you don't have to be able to see out of the woods. You just have to be able to see your next step, kind of thing. And like, that's all I did, kind of head down, just like one step to the next. And crazy lucky that like the walls just kept getting broken down, right? Like, as they came and they would go, and really fortunate in that regard. And so fast forward, COVID hits, world shuts down. I'm doing a lot of these final stages. I get to the point, I have a rod put in my leg. I'd have another couple surgeries to get a rod put in my leg once I graduated out of the metal cage. And I'm starting to do more advanced things, like trying to freaking run again and jump again. And so the world shuts down. There are no PT clinics. I'm not going, no one's, I can't go do this in office anymore with professionals. But I'm kind of to a point where I'm actually kind of trying to see if I could play QB again. So I've like got cleats on, and I'm finding every friend, kid, high school kid I can find to come run routes, right? Like, cause it's like, I want to see if I can do this. I have my wife playing defensive end, and like rushing after me to like see if I can fucking move and defend myself, and just I'm having fun with this, right? The world is shut down, And this is also one of those things, like I was incredibly lucky. Like my injury happened right before COVID, and like COVID hit and it sucked. It was this, like, you know, obviously tragic, and like the world, it was an adjustment for all of us. But like I had just spent 2 years in isolation pretty much, you know, like I was like, that didn't seem that bad. Like I hear I'm at a park, I get to be outside moving around. Like I was very much, I prepared for that, hardened, and I'm having a blast doing this, like seeing if I can do this. The entire time, I haven't said this, I get regular x-rays and scans, and I have a spot in my leg that's called a non-union, which means it's still broken. Like I have a break in the middle of my leg that has not healed. I have the metal rod in there at this point, and we're hoping this thing heals up, but it has not healed. And there's definitely cases before me, I know this, that people's legs don't ever heal. So like this could be like a looming chronic problem for me. And every time I'd had scans, it was like bad news. Like, you still have this non-union. We don't know if it's getting better. Is there still disease in there? Is it dead? You know, uncertainty that definitely like loomed. And so then during COVID again, I go this long period of no more scans, right? Like you're not going in for scans. And so it was the first, like the longest chunk of time that I had gone without imaging done on my leg. And this all coincides with getting towards the fall here of 2020. So we don't even know if there's going to be a football season. There's a lot of like turbulence, like what the fuck's going to even happen? What's that going to look like? Well, I have like my own turbulence again. Like I hear this is where I'm like, I'm also getting a little confidence, by the way, that like I can still throw. I can still drop back and throw. And I've got I've got permanent drop foot. I've got a huge loss of like strength and ability in my right leg, but like I have enough that like it looks different, but like I can throw to these neighborhood kids, you know, like I wonder if I can throw to an NFL receiver still. And I'm starting to like wonder. And I go back. So this is on the eve. This is like late July, right before training camp. And training camp may or may not happen, right? This went down to the wire with the NFL and like testing policy and protocols. And I get imaging done for the first time. And now it's been like 8 months, 7 months since I've had imaging done. And the last time I did it, again, not good news. And so I have all this imaging done back in DC, and all my doctors there confer with all the doctors down in San Antonio, all the military docs, and they like powwow on my imaging, because it's kind of like put up or shut up time, right? Like this is it or not. Yeah. My wife had even kind of said that to me, like this is your shot or not, you know? And I'm expecting bad news. And my lead doctor, my lead orthopedist in DC is like, hey, why don't you come over to my house, you and Elizabeth, and we'll talk about what we discovered. And I'm like, fuck, this is not good news. And we had grown very personal, like, you know, it'd been a 2-year relationship at this point, but like, I hadn't been over his house. Like, I'm like, this is not good. So I'm definitely like preparing myself for not good news. And we go over there, and it was really sweet. Opened a bottle of tequila, like poured us all drinks. All my doctors are there too, like the DC docs. And they're all in agreement with the military docs that I've healed enough. I still have a non-union, but it looks like it's getting better, and that it is enough healed. I have enough healing around it that like with the rod, I'm good to go. And I just have this like stupid shit-eating grin on my face, right? Like this is amazing news. And I can't stop peppering them with questions, because all these things that I thought I'd never be able to do again, I'm like, so like I can go like hiking. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I can go mountain biking, fucking rock climbing. Like I can go skiing. I can go snowboarding. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I'm like coming up with stupid shit. And then it hits me in that moment, like, oh shit, like I can play, they're going to tell me I can play football. And there was a lot of comfort I took in the 2 years prior to that. That like when I would say this, like I'd be like, oh, I want to play football again. Like there were a lot of patronizing people that like kind of patted me on the back and were like, hey, that's good. That's really great. You go try that, you know? And I think again, like I never actually thought it would happen. And then all of a sudden here, I'm getting told, like, I thought it was a million miles away, right? Like steps, of those steps I talked about, like planes, a million. Now all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, it's the next step, right? It's right in front of me. And I my stomach drops in that moment. I'll never forget sitting on their back patio when I got the news. My stomach drops and anxiety kicks in and self-doubt. And I've just received this amazing news. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
No.
Yeah, like, and I'm scared to death. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. My leg's going to break again. It's not going to hold up. And what if they're wrong? What if I look stupid? And like, again, I've just received this amazing news and I'm consumed with this. And this ride that I'm on, this journey, I want off this thing. So I'm with my wife and we leave and we just go sit in the car and talk. We don't like start it. We're still out front, like on the curb. And like, I think she can sense, kind of my apprehension and anxiety. And I am in my head. I'm like, all I want her to say is like, you know what, babe? We just got this great news. Do we really need football? And I would have jumped at it. I'd have been like, nope, we're good. And I want her to say this. Like, I want her to throw me the lifeline. Because again, I want off this journey. I'm scared. And amazing partner. Like, I think she asked me, she's like, listen, like, do you remember when you were in the hospital bed 2 years ago? Like, if you'd have been presented this opportunity, what would you have said? And that like hit me. And I've been like, I would have fucking jumped at it 2 years ago, right? Like when I was sitting there and those doctors gave me that shitty news and they told me I was going to be here, I would have leapt at it. But here I am having gone through it all and I'm scared to death and I don't want it, right? And we talked a ton about regret. And again, that I hear the experts in the world cleared me. And what was I going to do? Was I going to turn my back on this opportunity, And I'm incredibly thankful for her in that moment. Cause like, if she'd asked for it, she earned it. Like she had gone through so much, carried so much of the burden over those 2 years that like, she definitely, I would have, whatever she asked, I would have done. And no, I how powerful a moment that was that she kind of helped me get out of my own way again, And so I like to come back and again, you're wearing bright yellow jerseys in practice. It's COVID, so there's no preseason that year. Preseason gets canceled. So I've kind of gained confidence. I'm going to camp again. My locker mate is freaking Chase Young. We just drafted him with like the number 2 overall pick. He also played for Urban Meyer. It was Erie. So we had the same college coach, but yet we're separated by 16 years, age difference. And it like invigorated me. And I'm like, it was every day I would come to work and it was like pinch me moment, right? Like this is freaking, I felt like a kid. And I this thing that I thought was gone forever, I never thought I'd have again. I'm getting to do it one more time and putting cleats on and putting a helmet on. And I don't get any reps at practice. They don't want to get, like, I'm the old beat up guy. We got a new head coach. They don't want to see me out there. Like, and they're kind of just hoping I go away. I get to throw a little bit here on the side and I get 3 reps here, 7-on-7. And I'm starting to kind of like, well, I might be able to operate a little bit. Like, again, put me in the shotgun. I can't run anymore, but like might be able to deal. And I somehow make the 53-man roster. I'm enough that they make me the 3rd string quarterback. We got 2 young QBs ahead of me. I'm the 3rd string. And again, I'm wearing the yellow jersey. There haven't been games. So I've never been tackled. And I start the season as the 3rd string, which means you don't get any reps in practice. You don't dress for games, like nobody would actually even know. It's like Rudy. No one would actually even know if you're on the team, and I don't care though. Like I'm again, like it's just loving going to work again and, being in a locker room. And again, these awesome relationships and experiences that I thought were gone. And wouldn't you know it, about season's not going very well. And halfway through the year, they decide to make a quarterback change. So they bench the starter and it's kind of the domino effect. I go from 3 to 2 and I get to be scout team quarterback that week. And it's the most reps I've had in 2 years was that week. I got to be scout. We're playing the Rams. I got to be Jared Goff for 2 weeks and it was freaking amazing. Like I'll never forget coming home and like talking to my wife. I'm like, this would be so cool. Like I had so much fun this week being the scout team quarterback. Like, again, because mind you, I haven't played in 2 years either. I got to wear this carbon fiber brace that I'm still trying to figure out. I have drop foot. Like I can't move, but I'm having a ball. And again, gaining a little more confidence that like I can still throw it around. And I'm thinking, wouldn't this be really cool if I had like several weeks of this? It also coincides. So like, it's so funny. Like I think how things happen. we'd been playing in empty stadiums, right? COVID, no one going. Well, it was the first week that I got bumped up to the backup that the governor of Maryland opened up the stadium to friends and family only. So we got to have like 300 people come to the game. It was even weirder. But my wife and kids got to come. And it's the first game I'm dressing. And I'm back at FedEx Field. The last time I was there, all this entire thing got set in motion. And I remember thinking, like, again, like I said, like, oh, this would be awesome if I get to be scout team quarterback for like several weeks. Like I got, even in those like few days, I feel like I shed out, like I broke through so much rust. And this will be great if I have like several weeks of this, if I ever get a chance. And like, wouldn't you know it, second quarter, on our sideline, the starter, Kyle Allen, comes running and he takes this like monster hit on the sideline. And it was so loud. And I remember like immediately, I knew it. I'm like, here we go. And I mean, I'll never do it justice, the range of emotions that kick in that moment. And going over and getting my helmet and a ball and like taking some snaps with the center, like as they're attending to Kyle, right? Like all the docs, and he knows this. Like when you go down, you try to buy some time for your backup to like get ready. So you kind of milk it. And so he's milking it over there and they're checking him out. And I'm like getting some snaps in and some throws and I'm buckling up my chin strap and the coaches are coming over and like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And like what we're thinking here and like you're like immediately thrust into this situation. And, you're trying to take this all in. And again, the complete range of emotions for me, like there's half of me that is so jacked up for this, right? Like I'm so freaking jacked. Like I want to jump out of my skin. I can't believe this is happening. I'm so excited. I get to go play quarterback one more time. Like never could have imagined this. And then there's half of me that is just like, again, oh shit, you're going to go out there and what if this goes bad? Like, what if your leg breaks again or you look like a fool? And I say all this because all those steps on my journey prior to then, on my rehab journey, those walls that I had to work through, like, and eventually break down, all happened in like very safe environments, right? It was in a rehab room, or it was down at the Center for the Intrepid, or it was out on the practice field, right? Like they were very safe places for me to go see and work my way through that like uncomfortable feeling and then like ultimately push through it. Well, the last giant hurdle was me, could I get tackled? Right? I just spent 2 years. I was an infection risk. My leg was fragile. I have this non-union. Like I walked around on eggshells. Like I was afraid to slip and fall. Like, and now all of a sudden I'm intentionally running out onto a field as the quarterback. Like you got the ball in your hand every play, and the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet are trying to get you and crush you. And I'm not doing this in a safe space. I'm running out in the middle of a game on live TV with millions of people watching, and we're going to do this together, right?
Were you playing that day?
We were playing the Rams. So by the way,
so Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald.
Get the fuck out of here!
Oh my God, this is the greatest defender of all time.
So this is like it's so crazy how things work out. So like the guy that broke my leg is JJ Watt, who 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, right? There's only a couple of guys that have ever done this, and here I am, flash forward 2 years later, and so I'm running out on the field. We're playing the Rams. I think they had the number 1 defense in the NFL that year, and I'm running out. And again, there's all this range of emotion, scared, right? Bad self-talk. I'm running all these different ways. And no, there's one mantra I'm telling myself with all that going on, because I recognize it. And it's like, are you going to live today? Right? Like that's what I'm telling myself. Like, are you going to live? Are you going to be present or not for this experience? Right? Like the 10 guys in the huddle, the 53 guys on the sideline, like you owe it to them, like to be present and have it like full attention to the details. And like, so like that. And so for me, like, again, it's not that like anxiety and self-doubt aren't there. Like it's more like, again, like how do you react to them? And so for me, like, that's it as I step into the huddle and call the play. And I have a job to do, and I need to be ultra focused to do it. And so wouldn't you know it, my third play in, the first third down, I've never been tackled like this in 25 years of football. I go to step up in the pocket. They had a great defensive line. They're rushing, and I go to kind of step up, and I feel a human being jump on my back. Like he grabs my hip and kind of jumps up on my back like a piggyback ride. And again, I've never been tackled like this before, ever. And mind you, it's my first tackle back, of course, on this has to have like a 300-pound human being jump on me. And like I take a couple kind of like small steps, right? Like completely unaware. I'm protecting the football, and I go down, right? And I still like it is one of the most empowering moments of my life is like getting back up, like lifting myself off the ground, and like in that moment knowing that I'm not fragile, right? Like because that's what was in the back of my mind, that my leg is strong enough, right? And obviously realizing that it was Aaron Donald, who also happens to be one of the other members of that club, 3-time defensive player of the year. There's only a couple of them, and he's on the other. He's bookending this thing, and incredibly powerful moment for me. Incredibly powerful moment. And the fucking game was a shit show, you guys. It started raining. I got sacked like 5 more times. We got the crap kicked out of us. This was not your like it's end of the movie deal where like things went well. Like it was a disaster, a complete disaster. And I just like babysat the ball till the clock
doesn't matter.
Yeah, the clock ran 0. No, you're right. You're right.
Doesn't.
However, I'm so frustrated because like again, like my first game back, it started raining. Like again, it was miserable. I had to try to put a glove on, and like when you're a quarterback and it starts pouring, like it sucks. Like nothing good happens. And we just got the crap kicked out of us. Again, I got sacked a bunch of times. So I come home and I am like, dude, I'm super frustrated. Like this had like, it was kind of embarrassing, to be honest, like for me, like a little bit. Like I was like, that sucked. I'm better than that, you know? And I come home and my wife and like my sister and brother-in-law, my kids, it's like champagne party, you know, they're celebrating. You did this. It's so amazing. And I have like completely lost sight of that. I'm like, fuck that. That sucks. Right. Like I can't. But one of the amazing things of that moment, it was like, again, getting hit that many times and getting sacked that many times, it was very much like a rip the Band-Aid off moment. Like I had no doubt anymore that like my leg was strong enough. And I was lucky enough, I got to start 6 games the rest of that year. And I'll never forget, like every single one I started, like calling my wife like before in the locker room, again, that Sunday morning before the game. And I'm like, you know what? Like, this is probably the last one they'll ever let me play. And I'm going to freaking let it rip. You know, like I was like so pumped to like literally living like every day was your last in a football sense. And this is probably the last day they're going to get to let me do this. And so I remember taking the field, and every moment was like that. It was so amazing, like to play these games. And like, I knew every play could be my last one. Right. Like, and it was so refreshing to play like that and determined to be so present right in that moment. And I have friends that would call me, all my buddies that I played with, that were like, I feel like your mom, you know, like I'm so worried about you out there. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I got to a point, and really it was like, because of that Rams game, like I'd gotten to a point where like, again, I wasn't worried. And it was so refreshing. It was so amazing to play, to end my career, those 6 games. I've never played freer in my life, ever. And we like, wouldn't you know it, we end up winning 5 of the 6, right? I go 5-1, and we make the playoffs. We win the division and somehow make the playoffs at the end of the year. And it was just like this life-changing experience for me, right? Like that freedom, like certainly I was playing free at quarterback, but like I'll have that with me like for the rest of my life. And so I constantly get asked, like, why'd you do it? Like, why the hell would you have come back and played? Like, you know? And for me, it's always that. It always goes back to that. It goes back to like the rest of my life, Shane, like with my kids and doing stuff with them and my wife. And like, even for me, like the freedom, I'll have to adapt. I adapt from the day I get out of bed. My leg is not the same, and it never will be. But it doesn't matter. I have the confidence that like I can figure it out, right? Like whatever it is. And I've been lucky enough to go do a bunch of these crazy things that I never thought I'd be able to do, and skiing and boarding and rock climbing, and you know, like, and it's amazing. It's amazing to like try to figure it out. And again, like so lucky that like that entire journey gave me that, and that resilience, right? And it's not, I didn't just have it. Like it certainly is something that's like developed and again fostered by teammates and coaches and it's not like that I still don't deal with anxiety and self-doubt, going forward here. So, but yeah, crazy lucky that ended up, running the course it did. It could have gone so many different directions.
Well, I pushed back on the fact that you said you didn't have it. It was always there. It just wasn't revealed.
For sure. No doubt. But I think that's something that it has to get revealed. It has to get like clawed out of you, like certainly maybe it be in there, but it needs to be fostered, and you got to build that resiliency from doing difficult things and struggling, right? And as uncomfortable as struggle is, like I do look back on it to the point that when you're in those situations now, like there should be a part of you that says maybe this is what I need right now. Maybe this is the best thing for me, actually. Like maybe one day I would look back on this and it's like that was the moment. Right? Whether you're an individual or a team or, a company even.
I have 3 reactions and I hear it, man. One, like it's crazy because it's this horrible situation that now is going to have made you better. It's not just that you can do stuff. It's going to make you a better husband. It's going to make you a better dad. It's going to make you a better professional, everything. Like, and that's crazy because like it's life ending feeling like, and it's going to make you better. The second thing is, you forgot one thing that you do is you fucking wear shorts, you wear shorts and you wear flip-flops and you're proud of it. And like that guy was right, and like, that's crazy. Like I've seen you when we do shit, you wear shorts, and it's point of pride. I can see your smile right now. And the third, I would correct you in that you said when you got up and you could feel it, you felt like your leg was not fragile. It's like, fuck that, man. You learned that you're anti-fragile.
Yeah.
That's what you learned, right? Like you learned that. And like, I mean, hell yeah, that is so cool.
I didn't know it at the time, but my new favorite term, anti-fragile, like, and
that's what you learned you were, not just your leg, but you. Fuck, man. That makes me proud, like proud, like happy, like all the emotions, like even hearing the story, you go through all the emotions. You know what I mean, Shane? Like,
yeah, I mean, watching it from afar, we know the story. We watched you on TV, and to see you back out there that day, it's a miracle. I mean, just watching on TV, but to know you as a man and a father and as a competitor and as a glue guy and a co-host, it just makes me really proud, to have people in your life that can do shit like that. It's pretty amazing.
I do shamelessly use it like Ravi with Shane when he like was beating me. I'll start like limping on the course and like try to sometimes like milk another stroke or something, like get some empathy, but it didn't work.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, man. Did you ever have a fucking cage in your leg? Did they ever want to amputate your leg? I don't know. I guess it's weird that you would, give me this stroke, but Shane is, he holds us to a high standard, but I mean, damn, that is good, man. You got to have people in your life that you admire. Alex, man, I not just respect you and like you, I admire you, man. That is amazing.
Oh, thank you, man. I mean, honestly, it means a lot. But like, again, I feel like on this side of it, it's so funny how it flips, like how lucky you feel, like, and that's the truth. Like it could have gone so many different directions. And again, how lucky, like all the teammates and people along the way that like, when I needed it, were there, and not like knowingly, right? Like again, just the way they lived their life like affected me. And I think that's one of the cool things going forward is like whatever team you're on or a part of, like from family unit to like friends, circles, business, sports teams, or even just like humanity, like the big team. Like I think it's so cool to know that you can be that for one another, right? Like you have no idea what the person next to you is going through and where they're at. Like they could definitely be in one of the down, like they could be going through it, right? And like just how you go about your business and live your life. Like what Shane talks about all the time, like, right? Like just be a good person, man. Like, and I think that can have a profound impact on people, right? Like it took a lot of years. It was like 10 years later that Blake found out like the effect he had on me. And I'm actually bummed that I never told him sooner, but like, you just don't know, you don't know the effect you can have on one another.
Well, dude, you should also, that guy, is it Johnny Owens, your PT?
Yeah.
We got to get him on the show, right?
He's awesome. Yes.
because even just like to me, there's like this theme of like, bring the football. Like he like showed you something was possible by thinking, and just like, hey man, like this is possible. Like how cool is that? Gave you a thought that something you could do. And then your wife, like that moment of like kind of not letting you off the hook, you know?
My takeaway from the story is, again, you hear stories of resilience and things that people accomplish under, unimaginable traumas and adversity, and you're like, how the fuck do they? How do you do that? And it's crazy. Like to a man, Alex, it's no big deal. It's what you have to do, right? And so many people in the world, I think, struggle with that belief that they don't have that in them. And I argue, like, yeah, we all do. We all do. And it gets revealed in different ways. And obviously the people around you can help bring that out. But that's sort of why we're here, talking about these sort of things that to highlight, man, we're all just glue guys, everyone listening, everyone hanging out with us for the hour. We all got it in us. And I hope that people listening can hear this story. And maybe they're going through some tough times now. If not now, everyone faces tough times at some point, right? You can do it. If you have good people around you and that belief that you can do it. You did it, man. You're a hell of an example. Hell of an example.
I couldn't agree more, Shane. I think you hit it right on the head. All those things, like we all go through it, and you can, right? Like good people around you, and you keep pushing and lean into it, and you can,
Yeah. And then last thing, shout out to the military. I mean, just going and seeing the service people and what they've been through, and that inspiring you, and then also being there with you. I mean, like, I feel like that moment in it of like the people around you and getting to see, like you said, like think about every time you said gratitude, lucky. We're talking about a fucking injury that could have ended your life at some point, and you're talking about you're lucky for it. And it's like seeing what else you can do, seeing the stuff you can do, and then feeling like that, like that's amazing, man. And like some of that came from you being around these folks that have, like you said, given life and limb. It's amazing. It's amazing. Anti-fragile. That's it.
We got to get shirts. We got to get some gear, some anti-fragile gear. I'm on it. It's one of my. I've written it down like multiple times.
I also think, Alex, we need some Just Live shirts. We need some Play Free shirts. There's a lot of merch,
A lot of merch.
limited edition.